So how do we multiply our staffing? We use computerized maintenance management systems, event scheduling, access control, digital media, and different types of control systems. So a lot of what we have to do, we can automate. The static things, the things that don't change, or even if they change, they're just based on this is what's happening, or this needs to occur. Those are things that we can automate. The danger is if we have poor communication, or if we don't communicate well, the automations actually can cause you more of an issue than actually saving your time. So we can do it, and we can use these types of systems. But if you don't have good communication, if you don't have a culture in your organization, in your church, that says we're going to communicate well, this is not going to be helpful. Again, because it takes good communication to program these the correct way so that it actually does the work for you. And signs and scheduling stuff, turning things on and off. Makes sense so far? I'll just assume that y'all are thumbs up or shaking your heads at this point. But we could do that. Any other systems out there? I mentioned the most basic ones. Yeah. And sometimes these aren't staffing, and some of these aren't all computer-based. Sometimes, like lighting, we can use motion sense switches to turn stuff on and off, which is especially great in closets and supply rooms, mechanical rooms. We can automate our irrigation systems and use it to actually sense the local rainfall and adjust accordingly. Our fire alarms, computer alarms, even computer logins, right? So these are all things that we can add. And so when we're talking about that, you've heard this before, and I just want to throw that back out there again. This is the Internet of Things, right? Everything is connected. Except, unfortunately, in the church world, we seem to be about 10 years behind in adopting a lot of this stuff, and even farther behind when it comes to adopting effective communication and understanding why it's important to be good communicators, which is ironic considering the call, right, for us in our churches. And so when we're talking about communication, when we're talking about adding in integrations and stuff, this is where it starts. And you have to understand who your key stakeholders are when we start talking about communication, because not involving all of the correct people, or not involving everyone who needs to be part of the process is one of the first stumbling blocks that we have when we talk about poor communication and the cost. Because if you start doing something and then you don't involve the accounting or finance team, well, they're starting to get bills and they're like, what's this for? Or you're putting in communicating thermostats, but you don't tell the IT department, and they're like, what is all this on my network? Or the senior pastoral staff. Hey, we're going to make a bunch of changes, and senior pastoral staff doesn't like a whole bunch of changes thrown at them without them knowing about it beforehand. That's just been my experience. Correct me if I'm wrong, those of you out there who have done big projects, but usually it's good to keep them involved. And so that's kind of the first step, again, we want to talk about and point out. And then again, when we talk about short staffing and how that impacts us. This is a little old data. I say old, it's about a year old. But the 5 years or so, I've had one church come close to the recommended staffing levels. So again, this is why, what does this have to do with communication? If you're understaffed, if you're short-staffed, and you have people, communication becomes even more important, because you don't have time to correct bad communication. And bad commo, as we call it in military, bad commo leads to bad things, right? You have to have good communication, or you can't get the job done. So again, we're looking at it, just in my experience, over 6 million square feet that had inadequate staffing, right? And that's the equivalent of about 5,200 average hours of short staffing annually, right? When we look at all these churches.